Hello, my name is Matthew, and I just read The Musgrave Ritual by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and this is a part of my read along series and book club with Steve Donahue. We're reading murder mysteries in the month of March, and we're reading all of the Sherlock Holmes short stories. And The Musgrave Ritual, one of the best ones I've read recently, really got me excited and invigorated in this exercise of reading these all very quickly. The last few weren't gaining my attention as much as some of my old favorites, ones that are very memorable, really great ones that I had just forgotten about. And an aspect that I appreciate about some of the short stories that I felt were maybe a little bit weak is that they were still adventurous and experimental in Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's attempt to keep these stories fresh and approach them from different directions. And we get an extension of that in this short story. The last one, we had a case where we learned about Sherlock's first stab at being a consulting detective and putting his amazing deductive powers to use, but as a real amateur and very new at solving crimes. This one is a very early case by Sherlock, and again, it starts in the apartment at Baker Street with Watson commenting on the dual nature of Sherlock Holmes, being neat and tidy and fastidious in thought, and then also slovenly and sloppy and lazy at times. And so the apartment could just be a complete mess, like the Odd Couple, where you have the slob and someone else trying to take care of the apartment. And we get a great description of how Sherlock can button himself up and just look prim and proper, but he would have tobacco pipes in his slippers that he's smoking. He would have dangerous chemicals on the kitchen countertop. He would have evidence hidden in drawers, and then manuscripts or documents. Watson is the biographer, as he's referred, and there was a period of time when Sherlock is having his adventures and having his cases before he met Watson. And so he's keeping his own notes, he has his own index, and he's diligent and industrious in his note keeping, not organized. So as a result, the apartment is just full of piles, stacks of bundled up papers that are in no recognizable or useful organization. And that's the episode. That's the situation that we find these two in. And Watson, in a very sly attempt, makes a convincing argument to clean up the apartment, and Sherlock agrees. And then he picks up a bundle of trash that he had, and it was full of these old documents, his notes, and very cleverly on Sherlock's part, he pulls out a very early case of his before he met Watson, his biographer, and very enticingly says, well, we could talk about this case. I could tell you all about it. You're writing these stories. Or we can clean up the apartment. We can clean up the apartment, or we can talk about this fascinating case. What do you want to do? And then the case begins, and it's a fresh, different way of approaching these stories, done so much more successfully than a few of the other ones that I've read recently, that had the same energy of experimentation. And then the story, the case is great. It's the Musgrave ritual. We find Sherlock when he's still very early detective. He's not. He doesn't have the reputation that he has when we meet him in these stories that we've been reading, and he's also not at the complete height of his powers. So many of these stories, he just sort of moonwalks through, and just easy as could be, impossible murder mystery that I just can figure out by reading a newspaper. This isn't like that at all. Instead, we get Sherlock in full detective mode. We're watching him actively investigate and actively doing detection and detective work, and finding clues and solving clues, and getting stumped, figuring things out. It's such a great example of the concept of having a Sherlock character. What would he be like when he might have been a little bit younger and less experienced? And the case is simple enough. It's a rich old English family that has a fortune and goes back for centuries. And we have Mr. Musgrave, who came to Sherlock asking for help. Talks about how he has this incredibly intelligent butler who is also a bit of a Don Juan. He's out there canoodling, and he was going to get married. That fell through. He had another woman. That fell through. The butler has a wandering eye, and as a result of sort of reckless behavior, there's one night when Mr. Musgrave walks up and decides he can't sleep. He's going to go into the library and pick up the book that he had been reading. And to his surprise, he sees in the library there's already a light on. And he peeks through. He picks up an axe, because this is the kind of old English house that has those like suits of armor. It's a detail that didn't follow through, but he mentions that this guy picks up an axe before he thought it might be a burglar, and he might have to axe him to death. But he peeks through the cracked door, and he sees his butler reading an old document, an old family document that was locked up in a drawer. Not just a book off the shelf reading for pleasure, but a personal family document. And then he sees him go over to another drawer and open it up and pull out a map. And Mr. Musgrave sees enough of this and just comes in and goes, "What are you doing? That's enough. You're philandering. You're running around. You've been a good butler, but now you're going through our drawers. You're fired." And the butler pleads with him and says, "Give me a month to submit my resignation and not have to leave in disgrace." The guy says, "I'll give you a week." He says, "How about a fortnight?" He goes, "No, you get a week." 3 days go by, and the butler disappears. The nurse, who is one of the girls that the butler was canoodling with, has fallen sick, becomes bedridden, tries to work. They send her to bed. She disappears. And so now Sherlock is there, and we learn about the Musgrave ritual, which is a rite of passage that all Musgrave men must go through and have gone through throughout the centuries. And it's a list of these esoteric, obscure questions. And Sherlock realizes that it's essentially a treasure map full of clues. And it was pointed out that the butler is extremely intelligent. And so Sherlock thinks he should be able to figure out anything the intelligent butler should be able to figure out. Then we have a treasure hunt. And it has setbacks. There's one of the clues is about an elm tree that had been cut down, and Sherlock needs to figure out the height of the elm tree and at what time of day the sun would have hit the tree and cast a shadow, and where does it land, and puts a peg where he thinks the shadow would have ended, and there's a conical divot from where the butler had their divot, so he knows he's hot on the trail. They find themselves in the cellar, into a hidden compartment, essentially into a tomb that has a box. The girl had gone. The girl had gone missing. The butler is missing, and now they find that they were accomplices working together because the butler could trust her because there's a heavy stone lintel that needs to be moved. And then we have all these reveals of what was the butler doing, why did the nurse go missing, what's the importance of the Musgrave ritual, and just a great display of Sherlock Holmes coming into himself and being a genius, being able to figure out all of the amazing things that he can figure out, but we're seeing him work for it. And the treasure map plot line or aspect where there's just a series of clues that he's figuring out was really satisfying. I had a great time with this short story. Again, Watson is just hearing Sherlock tell him a story of his past. And so again, we don't have Watson as an active participant. And I really missed that aspect in the last short story. This one, there were so many things working so well that I didn't miss it. And there was such a great beginning with Watson's observation of how slobbish Sherlock could be, and then a funny situation of these two negotiating about whether or not they should clean the apartment, which results in Sherlock essentially outwitting Watson by telling a great story in order to not clean the apartment. Just fabulous. So for so many different reasons, a fabulous short story. Great chemistry, great mysterious story, just really good. So that was the Musgrave Ritual by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. If you've read it, please let me know what you think, and thank you for watching, and take care.